Okay, we're going to go ahead and continue with our cleanup notes and talk about the presidents. But before we do, get out a plain piece of paper here for a minute, and you can go ahead and pause the video while you do that. But I need to talk about, review the political issues of this time period again. All right? So go ahead and pause and get that. Come on back. All right. Three main political issues of this time period. One more time. Okay, number one, hard money versus paper money. Okay, either gold versus silver, or paper money in place of specie. All right, because people who owed money, farmers in particular, wanted inflationary policies, which mean greenbacks, paper money. Right? So that was one issue: hard money versus soft money. Okay? Second issue was the tariff. Okay? Should we continue to have a high tariff, or should we lower the tariff? And just a little bit on that. Um, Believe it or not, at this point, we were making plenty of money. We were not in debt. Every year, there was extra money left over in our treasury because we, covered our whole entire budget and had money left over. All right, and so Congress was looking around for ways they could spend the money rather than just sit on it. Okay, so some people felt, then why do we need a high tariff? We already have enough money. Let's lower that tariff and open up trade between us and other countries. So whether we should do that or not was high tariff or low tariff was the second issue. So first one, paper money versus specie. Second one is the tariff. The third one, civil service reform. And this goes to the spoil system. Okay? And we talked about the spoil system under Andrew Jackson, giving your friends, giving your relatives, giving them jobs in the government, your supporters, people that helped you get elected. Okay, do so in hopes that when you get elected, that you might be able to find them a government job or something like that. And it's difficult for me to explain, but there are hundreds of thousands of jobs that the government has that are called civil service jobs, right? And you get appointed to those. Well, there was a lot of concern, particularly because of the political corruption that was growing up within cities. Political bosses and political machines like Boss Tweed were, you know, making money off of the citizens, and politics was getting corrupt at the city level. It really came to a head after the Grant administration and the Credit Mobilier scandal and the whiskey scandal, the whiskey ring. Um, and anyway, you've got those four scandals that they had. So it came to a head under Grant that maybe the spoil system was not the best way to go, right? And so people are going to begin to talk about civil service reform and giving people jobs based on their merit. In other words, the fact that they actually knew how to do the job that they were doing versus the spoil system. So spoil system being the old way of giving your friends a reward for helping support you and get you in office, versus civil service meaning you actually knew how to do the job that you were getting appointed to. That will become an issue. All right. Now, on the civil service reform, within the Republican Party, there was a split. Okay? It's not a Democrat versus Republican deal. It's within the Republican Party, there was a split between those who favored the spoil system, okay, and those who wanted civil service reform. Okay? So two terms that come up in your book, stalwarts and half-breeds. Okay? Stalwarts are those people who favored the spoil system, the old way of doing things. And particularly there was one guy who was the leader of the stalwart faction, senator from New York, a guy by the name of Roscoe Conkling. Yes, once again, another lesson in history on what to name your child, what not to name your child. Don't name your kid Roscoe. He'll get beat up at school. All right? So Roscoe Conkling fights tooth and nail. Matter of fact, he's the guy giving out, within the Republican Party, giving out most of those plum jobs. He certainly does not want to see the spoil system go away. Okay? Those people in favor of civil service reform were called half-breeds. Half-breeds. Okay? The leader of their faction was a guy called James Blaine. His nickname was James G. Blaine from Maine. He's from the state of Maine. Okay, so he and Roscoe Conkling butt heads over this issue of the civil service reform. So class, as we take a look at each of these presidents now, okay, we want to make sure that we know where they stand on each of the issues. Are they in favor of civil service reform, or do they like the spoils system? Do they want a higher tariff? Do they want a lower tariff? And are they hard money advocates, or are they paper money advocates? So as we go over each president, we want to make sure that we understand those issues. All right? I think we got enough time where we can go ahead and start with Rutherford B. Hayes. It says presidents forgettable. Remember, this is the era of the forgettable presidents. And we, you know what? We can actually start with Andrew Johnson, who took over after Lincoln, because he certainly had no political power. I disagree with this, but Ulysses S. Grant, a very little known about him in terms of presidents. I don't think he would be one of your presidents at the top of your list. All right, particularly because of all the corruption that happened under his administration. He's viewed as a weak president. And then it just goes on. Rutherford B. Hayes, and then James Garfield, and Chester Arthur, and then Grover Cleveland, and then Benjamin Harrison, and then Grover Cleveland again, and William McKinley. These are just not people that, as we look back on history, we remember who they are. All of them, with the exception of Grant and McKinley, are going to serve one-term sentences. Most of them, not all of them, I think Grover Cleveland is the exception, Republicans. So this is going to be an era of Republican-dominated politics for the most part over those issues. All right? So we start with Rutherford B. Hayes. And remember, he was elected in that famous election of 1876, the Compromise of 1870. He really didn't win the election. He was given the election in exchange for ending Reconstruction, if you remember that. Okay? His nickname is Granny because he was a teetotaler. His wife's name was Lucy, and her nickname was Lemonade Lucy. In the whole 4 years that they were in the White House, they did not have any alcohol, which is, good, but it's a bummer when you're trying to entertain foreign dignitaries from countries that do drink alcohol. Not under the Hayes administration. His fraudulency, named after because it was said that his party bought him the presidency by exchanging and giving up on the African Americans in the South and giving up on Reconstruction. Okay? He alleviated stalwarts by appointing honest and capable men to his cabinet. All right. The trivia is that he signed a bill allowing women lawyers to argue before the Supreme Court. So there's trivia for you. Now, in terms of his philosophy and the issues that we talked about before, he is a hard money advocate. He is in favor of the gold standard over the silver standard. Okay? When the Bland-Allison Act was passed by Congress, he vetoed it, but Congress was able to pass it over his veto. All right, so he is a hard money. He would prefer to see gold as the standard. Okay? He is a supporter of civil service reform. He appointed the best qualified people to his cabinet, not necessarily the party favorites, which is going to earn him the wrath of Roscoe Conkling. Okay, Roscoe Conkling being a stalwart who favored the spoils system. Okay? He's going to support business over labor. Another issue of this time period is that labor unions are beginning to get strong. All right. We're talking about the Great Railroad. Matter of fact, we can go ahead and go down to the Great Railroad Strike of 1877. One of the four largest railroad companies in the United States cut wages by 10%, which caused their workers to go out on strike. And when they go out on strike, nothing gets moved. Okay, equipment doesn't get moved, mail doesn't get moved. In the end, Hayes is going to call in the federal troops to break up the strike. And again, and he will not be the last president to do this. Matter of fact, lots of presidents will use troops to break up strikes if they felt it's not in the interest of America, and he didn't feel it was in the interest of America. Uh, the Chinese Exclusion Bill, all right, of 1882, first act in our nation's history to restrict a group of immigrants, the Chinese. We'll probably talk about that a little bit later. Okay? It's going to completely ban Chinese immigration to the United States. And in the end, and Hayes will veto this because he doesn't think that's a good policy and it's discriminatory towards the Chinese. All right? So the two great events of his administration, the Great Railroad Strike of 1877, the Chinese Exclusion Bill. You can also see that the Greenback Labor Party is formed during his administration. If you go to the top of your notes, the Bland-Allison Act passed during his administration, even though he vetoed that. Okay? So there you have it. I'll probably talk a little bit more about the Chinese exclusion later under different presidents. Stop this for now.